Coal to be carried as bulk cargo. We can look up for a discussion on carriage of coal, precaution, hazards, etc. involved. On the onset, two hazards are always there, present: self-heating and explosion risk. So these are some problems identified to start up.
सर
हाँ जी बोलिए।
सर आपने कल वो नोट्स नहीं अपलोड किए सर जो कल पढ़ाया सर उसके।
कल क्या था हमारा टॉपिक?
सर हम बल्क कैरियर की वो डेमोस्टेबिलिटी ड्राफ्ट वाली बात कर रहे थे ना, वो लोडिंग रेट वाली बात कर रहे थे, फिर डिबलास्टिंग की कैपेसिटी वाली बात कर रहे थे।
ओके
तो
ठीक
वो
है।
वाले नोट्स सर अपलोड कर देना, रात को पढ़ने लगे तो देखा है ही नहीं कुछ।
ओके आई गॉट योर पॉइंट, आई गॉट योर पॉइंट। एक बार कुछ अपलोड किया था, नहीं पहुंचा वो। गिव मी अ मिनट। ऐसा मुझे याद है कि अपलोड किया था। एक चेक मारिए। You should be able to see something now. Have a check on the link. Okay. Something has been passed. You can have a look at it. And now let us resume our discussion on coal cargoes. So, by description, very concise, it has origins. Coal has origins as vegetable matter, which has been subjected to heat and pressure over time. Maybe because submerged underneath the surface, being subjected to heat and pressure. Then it gets composed or decomposes to carbon. And of course, it has variable components. Shade screen. So it will be different kinds depending upon how much pressure and temperature this particular coal parcel has been subjected to. So it will have different kinds. For example, peat.
सर
Aji,
सर कल आपने ये पढ़ाया था, क्या बोलते हैं, बल्क कार्गो का। एक तो जैसे पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स,
okay.
तो सर उस पर मेरे को ये पूछना था, ये पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स अपन लोडिंग से पहले देखेंगे, लोडिंग के बाद देखेंगे, एंड व्हाट इट विल बी इफेक्टिंग।
यार तो एक बात बताओ, अब वो हमने टॉपिक क्लोज किया, नाउ यू वांट मी टू गो बैक टू इट। उस
सर
समय हमने क्यों नहीं
सर
देखा?
अब मैंने शाम को कल शाम को पढ़ा, तो आज प्रॉब्लम तो आज ही पूछूंगा या कल वापस बैक टाइम मशीन में जाके कल पूछूंगा?
यार ज्यादा प्रवचन नहीं कर, ज्यादा नहीं, ठीक है। मैंने आपसे हर बार पूछता हूँ कि कोई दिक्कत है, कोई इशू है तो बोलो।
तो सर मैंने तो अब टॉपिक तो रिवाइज के बाद ही डाउट आएगा ना, कोई पहले तो आएगा नहीं। मतलब उस समय पढ़ लिया, उस समय नहीं आया तो अब पूछ लिया, अगर आपको लगता है तो नहीं पूछूंगा आगे से।
नहीं नहीं, पूछो, बिल्कुल पूछो, पर अब ऐसा करो, कीप दिस इन योर माइंड, क्योंकि लेट अस नॉट इंटरप्ट द क्लास। वी आर गोइंग टू अगेन कम टू द कंक्लूजन कि चलो अब क्लास एंड करनी है, डू यू हैव डाउट, उस समय रेज कर दो।
ओके सर।
ओके, even if it is something relating to a topic we have already covered previously, so when we are trying to say कि यार कोई doubt है, कोई query है, but this is not a good idea that we interrupt the class, that we go back to it. Not really go back to it, if you agree. So we are going to come back to it as soon as we stop any discussion. Right now, let us continue and close out the topic of coal carriage as we have already started it. Lignite, brown coal, peat, these are all names for different categories of coal. Bituminous coal, dark brown, black, etc. Subbituminous coal utilized for heating, steam electric power generation, etc. These are all various kinds of coals. And bituminous coal, black coal, is one of the most familiar coal and is primarily used as fuel in both open fires and in steam electric power generation. Anthracite is a high ranking coal, means category is high ranking. This is hard glossy black coal, subjected for use for residential and commercial heating, which may not be really true for our country since we belong to a warm tropical country, but this is very much prevalent in cold countries. One of the primary source of coal is Indonesia. The coal mining primary source is Indonesia. Of course, we also have it. You are aware of it. Coal mining is also done in India. So, by history or by analysis of the coal found in Indonesia, it has low dust and sulfur contents, which are desirable for steam coal production. Low rank coals, which is also found here, have high volatile contents, which means they also have resin content. And obviously, this part is not really necessary, just for information only, where in Indonesia these coal is found. But not really important to remember this. But this is important. During the coal forming process, gases like methane can become trapped in the coal. This feature gives rise to a significant operational and transport hazard. Methane, as you are aware, is a flammable gas. And of course, coupled with this, the emission of methane, gases like methane getting trapped in the coal content only. Coal undergoes spontaneous oxidation. Affinity to oxygen, it absorbs oxygen, and the energy released in this process is trapped. If not dissipated to atmosphere environment, it can cause what is called self-heating. Self-heating, of course, will give rise to temperature. So when the coal is undergoing self-heating, it can also result in secondary hazards like production of carbon monoxide (CO) and other toxic flammable gases. Because it is absorbing oxygen, self-oxidation is taking place, so oxygen depletion zone can be created where you're carrying coal. You may note down these as points for hazards. Interestingly, shippers themselves blend self-heating and methane-producing coals for reducing hazards. They blend it. Self-heating coal and methane-producing coals are blended for transport. If it is done like this, obviously it is going to be declared to the vessel by MSTS. Blended coal. Self-heating and methane-producing both are blended to eliminate one kind of hazard only. Some, of course, names are there, which are used in bill of lading and MSDS, etc. Thermal coal, metallurgical coal, coking coal, you know, different names, trade names for coal. IMSPC also refers to coal as a cargo, and this one talks about coal classified as Group B and Group C. As things stand, IMSPC code refers to only one type, only one entry by the name coal. So, if there is a coal cargo, it has to be declared like coal. Then IMSPC can be consulted under the heading coal, and all precautions enlisted there or ventilation procedures can be followed. Mostly coal is shipped in form of lumps, but there are cases where fine grain is also uh, transported. When it is being transported as fine grains or fines, it has a chance of liquefaction. Then it will require declaration of TML, certificate of TML, and moisture content certificate. Of course, the IMSPC is going to correlate and instruct how to test for TML and MC, moisture content. Coal slurry, as the name itself suggests, is having fine coal particles but has moisture content. Coal slurry, as it is, the name itself suggests that it is kind of liquefaction done already. So this is also going to require TML certificate and moisture content certificate. Very simply put, transportable moisture limit, has to be more than the moisture content present. Moisture content is present, उसका एक certificate है, that moisture content should be less than TML. Only then it can be transported. If you are having to intention to carry coal, then appropriate gas monitoring equipment for the voyage should be there. Means methane measurement, oxygen measurement for depletion, if any, this equipment has to be there. Only then you will be well equipped and safe to carry coal. So, prior to loading coal, this is what you're going to be doing. First of all, a MSDS, which will declare whether the cargo has a history of self-heating or methane emission. If this is not declared in the MSDS, then you need to go back to the shipper and ask him for this information. You cannot blindly load coal. You have to get it from him whether it has a history of self-heating or methane emission. Now, somewhere in Indonesian coal, both these properties exist. Obviously, since there is an issue regarding self-heating or methane emission, coal cargo will require continuous monitoring during the voyage. Which means self-heating will be taken care by monitoring the temperatures and methane by gas readings. And obviously, it goes without saying that this gas monitoring equipment should be calibrated and should have a valid up-to-date calibration certificate. This is something the cargo officer, which is USG officer, will have to ensure up-to-date calibrated meters and equipment, including temperature measurements, thermometers, gas monitoring. They should be calibrated and up to date. Also, training is required. Training is required for all people on board as they use how to use this gas meters or thermometers. No point in having one which we don't know how to use. For gas meters, there is a chance you may have an inbuilt pump, aspirator. You draw the gas or the atmospheric air into this sampling point and then analyze it. Normally referred to as aspirator. It can draw the air from wherever you have lowered the sampling tube. It can draw the air by pumping. You press and then air is, when you release it, air is drawn inside and this will be analyzed, giving you readings. You must stop after one reading has been taken to let the meter return to the reading normal gas levels before attempting next one. And yes, you will have to maintain the equipment by preventing any dust, moisture, etc. entering the tube, which can damage the sensors. So if you are loading, you have been declared by the shipper in the MSTS that you are loading a self-heating coal. It has been declared. Then it will have a repercussion on the O2 levels because a self-heating coal will normally decrease the O2 level. It could show decreased O2 levels. It will consume the oxygen for self-heating, so it will show decreased O2 levels. That is one indication that, of course, you are monitoring the atmosphere. So when you see decreased O2 levels, then you know this could be self-heating. The next step will be to monitor the temperature if it shows like this, because you have recognized that this is self-heating, also declared by the shipper. So the next step will be to monitor the temperature. Now this is emitted during self-heating and this has no smell. The gas has no smell. That is why it is also called a silent killer. No smell, but it has the property, if I can use the word property, binds it binds to the hemoglobin. The CO binds to the hemoglobin in blood. Of course, hemoglobin found in blood and is 200 times more strong than oxygen. So it shuts down oxygen supply to the various organs which require it. This is something to leading to suffocation. It is not poisonous, but it will lead to suffocation. Suffocation means lack of oxygen to vital organs. So this is another problem, emission methane, which is chemically known as CH4. That is only the chemical symbol. So this concentration is also to be monitored, and if it reaches something like 20% of the LEL, lower explosive limit, then ventilation has to be done. Actually, you should be having on board multi-gas meters, which can monitor several gases like carbon monoxide, methane, oxygen included, multi-gas. So there is a problem regarding hydrocarbons reducing the oxygen levels, and most of these meters will not work properly below 12% O2 values, because most of the gas meters use combustion sensors which require oxygen to function. If you are having a low oxygen content value, then the meter itself will not function properly. This is very important. By MSPC mentioned also, coal shall only be accepted for loading when the temperature of the cargo is not higher than 55 degrees Celsius, because it has a tendency for self-heating. So any temperature of the parcel of cargo more than 55 degrees Celsius is not supposed to be accepted for loading. Now you see, obviously there are issues. The shipper may declare that the coal has a history of self-heating. Then you have to monitor temperature, of course, during loading, prior to loading, and then during voyage also. Now suppose the shipper has declared there is no history of self-heating, but you as a prudent action will require to monitor the cargo temperature anyway. So you monitor temperature during the voyage, but before loading you monitor and see that this parcel is not having a temperature above 55 degrees Celsius. And if you see that the coal temperature is already at 55, then very safe conclusion in the sense is could be that your MSDS is misdeclared, not declared properly. He is declaring that the coal does not have a history of self-heating. When you monitor the temperature prior loading, you see it at 55. So you know this is misdeclaration. If the temperature is below 55, it is safe enough to load because you have sufficient time to monitor the temperature before it reaches 55. Stockpiles, where the cargo is stocked up, as a chief officer, the person in charge for loading should have access to it. You should be able to access. Access means you should be able to go there and see the temperature of the cargo even before it is brought to load. Access to stockpiles.
Sir,
Haji,
सर ये जो रॉन्ग डिक्लेरेशन आपने बोला है कि अगर रॉन्ग डिक्लेरेशन हो सकती है इसकी सेल्फ इग्निशन की, तो सर इस केस में हम क्या करते हैं सर, दोबारा उससे शिपर को डिक्लेरेशन मांगते हैं क्या?
नहीं, बात ये हो रही थी अरमान कि सपोज you are monitoring the temperature of the cargo even prior loading. Now the shipper has declared that this cargo does not have a history of self-heating. ये उसने declare किया है. And when you see the temperature before the cargo comes, you already find it at 55, which means it is a misdeclaration. This is what I would say.
ओके सर, ओके सर, क्योंकि मेरे को लगा सर जो कंटेनर से ना सर, जैसे उसमें कोई रीफर मैनिफेस्ट आता है तो कुछ डिक्लेयर गलत होता है तो हम उससे पूछते हैं करेक्ट मैनिफेस्ट, तो इस केस में पूछ रहा था कि इसमें भी ऐसा कुछ होता है क्या?
Yes. देखो, अगर आपने उसको टेम्परेचर को प्रायर लोडिंग देखा, चेक किया, आपने देखा कि टेम्परेचर ऑलरेडी थ्रेशोल्ड 55 पे है, but you are aware that the code suggests you cannot load if temperature is higher than 55, right? एक बात हो गई. Secondly, the shipper says this coal does not have a history of self-heating, but as you are monitoring temperature is already 55, then you can raise an objection. Now you got a basis. Therefore, you can say this is wrong declaration.
ओके सर.
Arman, as you say wrong declaration and you put a stop to cargo, saying it is wrongly declared and you are not prepared to load because temperature is a concern, then you are fully aware this is going to raise up all the issues, including off hire. So you should have proper backing why you are doing it, so that the impact for grounds.
ओके सर, बेसिकली आप एविडेंस पहले इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं अगर कुछ गलत होता है.
हाँ हाँ हाँ, तुमने अभी बताया ना कंटेनर पे अगर रॉन्ग मैनिफेस्ट है, हो सकता है, चांसेस आर कि रॉन्गली मैनिफेस्टेड हो.
यस सर.
So similar thing will apply here also on bulk carriers. But anything you are trying to wake up or raise, you make sure that you have sufficient grounds, including documentation and paper ready up. That you should ensure before you start raking up. Because as I told you, ships are soft targets. Mostly people manipulate to put everything back on the ship. तो उससे पहले आप सारा कुछ रेडी रखो. Then you make noise that this is wrong declaration. You're putting actually question mark over the authenticity of the MSDS. You're putting a question mark on the authenticity or credibility of the shipper. तो होगा ना. You are trying to put a credibility question mark. ठीक है, you are perfectly legitimate, you are perfectly in order because your concern is safety. But before you do it, make sure your end is completely sealed.
ओके सर.
Right. It's good, Arman. It is good because you see, we are not expected to know everything. So if you have not worked here, not carried coal any chance, you may be ending up after cheap mates to carry coal. So you should be fully armed with knowledge. तो ऐसा करो. Do ask. Do intervene.
सर जैसे ये कोई कार्गो होता है IMSBC में, उसमें वेंटिलेशन उसका अलग दिया रहता है, जो शिपर एक पर्टिकुलर अपना सेट देता है कि इस हिसाब से वेंटिलेट करना है, तो कौन सा फॉलो करेंगे सर?
देखिए, हमें mostly the IMSBC code has to be followed and a shipper declaration will follow that code. Very good, very little chance that he is something else except the IMSBC. Because MSDS is prepared on the basis of MSBC.
सर अगर ऐसे केस में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आ जाता है तो हमें क्या करना है एज चीफ ऑफिसर?
देखो, अगेन इस केस में आपको वापस जाना पड़ेगा शिपर के पास, कीपिंग एवरीबॉडी इन लूप. योर शिप ओनर, योर चार्टर, योर कार्गो ओनर इफ इज समबडी एल्स, सबको लूप में डालना पड़ेगा कि ऐसी सी बात है. IMSBC इस कार्गो के लिए ये वेंटिलेशन बोल रहा है और शिपर डिक्लेरेशन ये बोल रहा है. You will have to put everybody in loop and wait for their क्या बोलते हैं कंफर्मेशन, पर इतना ज़्यादा वेरिएशन आएगा नहीं, because MSDS prepared by the shipper is in accordance with the code. आ गया तो फिर आपको पूरा लूप क्लोज करना पड़ेगा. You will have to go back to the shipper. You will have to keep everybody in copy that this is an issue you are facing.
ओके सर, बेसिकली हम एक श्योरिटी मांग रहे हैं कि जो आप डिक्लेयर कर रहे हो अगर उसको फॉलो किया, इन फ्यूचर कुछ हुआ तो वी आर नॉट रिस्पॉन्सिबल.
देखो, चलो ये बात मानता हूँ मैं तुम्हारी, लेकिन आपको पहले देखना है कि आप सेफ हैं. बाद में इशू उठेंगे ना कि क्या हुआ. आपकी योर लाइफ, सेफ्टी ऑफ लाइफ इज फर्स्ट, पैरामाउंट. उसके लिए इफ यू हैव टू स्टॉप कार्गो आल्सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस इशू, यू डू इट, बिकॉज सेफ्टी इज पैरामाउंट. But as I said, in an eventuality like this, Amit Kumar and everybody else, you have to realize fully, lot of issues will be raised, lot of off-hire issues, etc., and which has a financial impact. So before doing this, keep your paperwork thorough, close out everything, then start. मैं आपको एक चीज बता रहा हूँ. You have heard of ore concentrates, ore, Oscar Romeo Eco, ore concentrates. Most of the ore concentrates have a tendency to liquefy during transport. They have tendency to liquefy. Moisture content ज़्यादा होगा, TML exceed कर गया, due to motion of the vessel, sloshing can start and the vessel may easily capsize because of free surface. Now, MSDS for such cargo is supposed to list from an approved laboratory. The shipper is supposed to provide evidence from an approved laboratory that what is the moisture content present and what is the TML, transportable moisture limit, of such cargo. Right? Now, when you look at this, and if you have an issue, what do? I'll tell you. I was not provided with an MSDS in I can tell you the name of the port also. थोड़ी बात पुरानी हो गई है. Paranaguá in Brazil. We were loading copper concentrate and I was not provided with this information. I raised an objection and I stopped the cargo because I was insisting that first of all we should have an MSDS giving us proper declaration regarding TML and moisture content. Because this is a cargo which has been identified as Group C, cargo likely to liquefy. So I'm not going to load it before I have this. अब जहाँ तक शिपर की बात थी और चार्टर की बात थी, they were of course Brazilians, they had a hand in hand and they kept on insisting कि इसकी जरूरत नहीं है. और उनका एक ही रटाया सेंटेंस आता था, Captain, many ships go like this, many ships do like this, many ships may do like this is their problem. I am talking of this ship, which is my ship. I am not interested in many ships. So please provide this information or we stop. अब ओनर भी आ गए बीच में, ये क्या कर रहे हो, ऑफ फायर हो जाएगा. हो जाएगा, मुझे तो MSDS चाहिए with declaration. So sometimes you do end up like this. Consequently, they did provide with an MSDS, which I was not very happy with. I carried out a CAN test myself. उसके बारे में बात करेंगे when we discuss TML. A CAN test can be performed on board to see that everything is in order. CAN test to see cargo which is sensitive to liquefaction is not happening by CAN test. So you can end up into issues like this, and sometimes you have to take a stand. So if you are ending up like this with wrong declaration, misdeclaration, then probably you have to take a stand that you are going to stop. So if suppose you are loading coal from a barge and it is found temperature is in excess of 55, then the shipper has to either cool such cargo, using bulldozers, etc., rotate them so that cargo is cooled out, or ensure such coal is not loaded. Now, this of course will require continuous monitoring by the crew by way of checking temperatures, and also, you know, this will not be just surface temperature presently. As the cargo is coming on board, new surface is exposed, you have to check again and again so that you're very sure of that temperature. You understand? Rotating the cargo to keep it cool or cool it down, rotating. Now, suppose the shipper has not given an indication that this coal by history has self-heating history. So, it does not mean that it absolves you from checking temperature, because unfortunately shippers do have a habit for commercial impacts of not telling the truth. So without placing too many question marks, you will back yourself for monitoring temperature to determine if the coal is self-heating. Now in Indonesia, most of the coal is brought alongside the vessel from barges. Ship's gear, crane, grab is used to load the cargo which is there in the barges alongside to the vessel. So monitoring does become an issue. You could use, instead of an open thermometer, spot thermometer, you could use what is called an infrared thermal spot temperature monitoring device. Have you seen this one? Infrared IR red thermal spot device. Okay, I'll tell you. Not really infrared, but suppose you have been to engine room, you can see engineers taking temperature of various equipment, including their pistons, etc., by using a infrared temperature gun. That is good enough to be used also for monitoring temperature of cargo. It has got a sensor and will give you a digital readout. आजकल भी तो यूज करते हो आप, not infrared exactly, but you use this sensor like for pandemic monitoring wherever you are entering. Of course, this one is very small. This cannot measure temperature of the pole, but you can have equipment like this. So without entering the site itself, you point the gun towards it and you get the readout, thermal readout. Now it is not enough to measure or monitor the temperature of the surface only. You should be monitoring below the surface. Once it has been disturbed by grabs, you must check again and again. Also, if possible, good shippers might place temperature sensors on the loading conveyors itself. So these can also be monitored if access is granted on the loading conveyor itself. Self-heating may not be happening into the whole of the pile. It may be localized. Therefore, temperature monitoring will have to be done throughout the loading process. It may be a localized fitting which could lead to temperature rise. Self-heating may be only in a localized area. So just by taking one part of the temperature, one area, you cannot be sure. You will have to keep monitoring the temperature as the level of the cargo drops, or if you're doing it on board, as the level of cargo rises. So that was self-heating coal, and you can have, as we said, methane emitting coal. This is a highly flammable gas. Precautions are required to load and transport such coal. So methane emitting coal is also a potential problem for coal hazard. Again, this is declared by the shipper if it is having a history, if this particular stockpile is having a history of methane emission. Then pronto, immediately you should be having access to the gas measuring equipment. So, what about problems during the voyage and at the place of discharge? Monitoring temperature, management of the cargo, and getting gas monitoring also done is one of the things which you will always follow. Although said to be very easy cargo, no concerns, but these are concerns. Now, because the cargo could be self-heating, even if it was loaded with temperatures below 55, it could have a repercussion later on in the voyage, because self-heating can give rise to the temperature although loaded below 55. One of the good ways of monitoring temperature inside a hold at different levels is to lower the temperature sensor through the sounding pipe of bilges. The bilges are starting from top and they go right down. you can monitor temperature by lowering the thermometer or the probe and stopping at different levels in the bill sounding pipe. So you can have an idea. Maybe you start right from the bottom. You are aware of the full sounding. Let us say bill sounding, full sounding is 18.6 meters. You are aware of that. So you lower the temperature probe, let us say up to 18 meters, record the temperature, bring it up, lower it again, now this time to 15 meters, again take the temperature, log it down, note it down, then pick it up, lower again, this time to 10 meters. By this way, different levels you have already monitored the temperature in the loaded passage. Chips which are actually doing this in day in and day out do have gas sampling ports for assessment of gas levels without opening hatch covers. It may not be really the case if you are not doing this cargo day in and day out, not the normal trade, but then you have to find alternative methods. One way could be lowering the gas meter through vent duct or the ventilator itself. So this is how it continues. We are not done with it yet. We'll resume. Let's have a small break, Kit Kat and coffee, and we start again at 15:45. Okay.
थैंक यू
Okay,
सर
sir. Thank you.
Okay, G. Can you hear me? Am I audible? I don't know why it is showing microphone muted. There's nothing like that. I haven't muted the microphone, so I'm confirming. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is one flow chart which can be used for phone. It's called voice management. First of all, is it being declared as liable to produce methane? Is the cargo declared in the MSDS as cargo liable to produce methane? If the answer is yes, then you have to ventilate continuously. Close periodically. What you close periodically is to monitor the gases. At that time, you should stop ventilation when you are monitoring gases. The second aspect could be, is it being declared as liable to self-heat? If the answer is yes, then you have to seal the holes immediately after loading. If the carbon monoxide component is rising, then you have to seek expert advice. If the answer to this is no, then you have to go here. If this answer is also no, highly unlikely, but if it is no, then you have to follow normal procedure. You are in the safe zone. Neither it is producing methane, neither you are declared as self-heating. Then you have to just follow normal procedure. You are in the safe zone. Do ventilate for at least 24 hours after departure and then measure methane levels. When measuring levels, you have to close valves or close ventilation. Is the methane level reducing to below 20% of lower explosive limit? If the answer is yes, then close vent and monitor. If it is above 20%, answer yes, then you have to keep ventilating. And you have to keep the holes closed and continue monitoring. Just as a guide or flowchart. But of course, cargo behavior, gas monitoring data is going to be dependent on, it is not generic, it is customized from case to case. Explosion hazard should have a priority over everything, self-heating to be avoided. Then of course there is the issue about coal fires. I'm sure you've heard of it. This is a phenomenon which does occur because of self-heating. They actually start as small fires and then suddenly they escalate into raging infernos is the term used. They will produce a lot of smoke, toxic gases. Now using water to extinguish fire, okay, is an option. But that is going to add to the weight of the water, the weight of the hole. Adding weight of the water can damage the ship by overstressing the hole, or it could also lead to slurry and can move around. And later on, cleaning of such a hold will become very difficult. If you have added water to extinguish fire, of course, this is done as an emergency, but cleaning later on is also going to be an issue. So if it is actually burning or if there is a fire going on, accessing the cargo for discharge is also going to be difficult because of the temperatures. What you can do is normally, periodically, during the voyage, you can check the pH of the water in bilge wells. pH. So you obtain a sample in the bilge well and then check by strips the pH value 1 to 7, 7 to 14, how is it behaving? Acidic is indicating there is something going wrong. Acidic value of pH is indicating something is going wrong. And of course, that acidic value also indicates that the bilge well itself can be harmed, corroded. Of course, very easily said than done. Availability of inert gases, unless you are, it may not be possible on a bulk carrier to obtain inert gases. Because inert gases can be introduced into the hold just to suffocate the fire. But it may not be possible to have such a large quantity of inert gases available on a bulk carrier. So discharging can also be an issue if you have self-heating cargo. Small localized areas of smoldering, burning coal with considerable amount of smoke can cause a concern for discharging also. The smoke will be automatically released as soon as the hatch covers are open. So situation can get worse. Restrict the opening of the holds until everything has been settled down, including the issue regarding where the coal will be stockpiled after discharge. Then only you start opening the holes. Opening the holes is going to allow oxygen to access the cargo, which can promote self-heating. Also, any water used for firefighting should normally be fresh water, again a rare commodity on board, rather than seawater, because salt water contamination of the coal could render the receivers not tolerating it. Contamination by salt water can render the cargo useless. So, advisable to use fresh water if you are going to use water to fight fire. Again, availability will be a concern. Fresh water is a rare commodity on board, but if available, then this should be preferred instead of seawater. So actually speaking, seawater should not be introduced for one reason. If this coal is bound after discharge to a power station boiler, then this can cause corrosion to the power station boiler itself if it is having chloride contamination. If you have started discharging self-heating coal, then it is important that the full cargo is discharged. Holds are completely empty after discharge because part discharge holds can have large reservoir of oxygen gas which can just fund the self-heating reactions. So if you are discharging self-heating cargo, preferably it should be done completely, fully empty. I'm sure you're noting down this as precautions while loading, carriage and discharge. There have been cases by study of PNI clubs where part discharge cargo holds ignited when the vessel moved out to anchorage. Maybe part discharge cargo was there, self-heating cargo, and then this ignited. So this should be preferably fully discharged. पूरा का पूरा खाली कर दो. Of course, smoke generation, which is coupled with self-heating or an issue of burning or fire, can prevent stevedore access to the holds. This can also lead to off-fire cases because discharge is not possible. Hot methane emitting coal will require opening of the hatches and that will allow oxygen to enter the holes. When mixed with methane, this can be result of an explosion. So no ignition, sources, of course, no smoking behind. And the hatch cover wheels greased. They should be greased adequately to reduce any possibility of sparks igniting the methane. So hatch cover wheels greased to avoid any possibility of sparks like igniting the methane and oxygen mixture causing the explosion. Even that is to be taken control of. If there is a suspect regarding self-heating, you can have firefighting personnel from the shore also on standby. When you are already suspecting that the cargo can result in fire, then no harm in taking preventive measures by employing out station or means people from ashore as standby for firefighting. So this was regarding some precautions, etc. Let's have another look at yeah, something from IMSBC regarding coals general requirement. All information to be received before accepting cargo. Now, if it has already been declared by the shipper that the cargo is liable to self-heat by history, then must seek confirmation and precautions to be taken from the shipper himself. Procedures intended for monitoring cargo during the voyage. This should be sought from the shipper also. What measures to be done, precautions to be undertaken, since he has only identified that the cargo is liable to self-heat. If there is an indication of increasing concentration of CO, carbon monoxide, then of course more precautions have to be taken. Like hatches should be closed immediately after completion of loading. Surface ventilation should be limited only for the amount of time necessary to remove methane that may have accumulated. Forced ventilation not to be used, and of course, air should not be directed into the body of the coal because this can lead to self-heating. Even ventilation has to be done precise and correctly. As we are already aware, we have talked about it a couple of times, any cargo hold or cargo compartment is to be treated like an enclosed space. That is guideline from the IMO. Any cargo compartment, irrespective of the nature of cargo, is to be treated as an enclosed space. So, if somebody is making an entry into cargo space, irrespective of what cargo, and for coal, of course, then we are looking at a CBA apparatus to be worn because of oxygen depletion and maybe some methane gas or something. So that is essential. SCBA, of course, will be worn only by people trained in its use. When required by a competent authority, cargo spaces should be carbon monoxide concentration in cargo space should be measured at regular intervals to detect self-heating if any. We had talked about it. Let's see if you can recall who is a competent authority. Competent authority. Who can be addressed as a competent authority for purpose of cargo work? The port state of loading, the flag state of the vessel, and the port state of discharge. All these three entities can be termed as competent authorities. So I'm looking at the administration, which is the port of loading. I'm looking at the administration authorities at the port of discharge and the flag state of the vessel. All three can be referred to as competent authorities. Any one of them may require some special precautions to be taken or the cargo space atmosphere to be monitored. They are aware that you are loading coal. They are aware that it is likely to self-heat. So they may require your carbon monoxide concentration in each cargo space to be measured at regular times. Any one of these parties, any one of these entities. Then you have to do it. By any chance, if the temperature is monitored to be in excess of 55 degrees Celsius, you have to stop and you have to seek expert advice. When you're monitoring CO levels, if it is rising steadily, self-heating can be safely in the sense, can be assumed. Then cargo space has to be completely closed, all ventilation to be ceased.
सर ये एक्सपर्ट क्या एडवाइस देगा?
Sorry?
ये एक्सपर्ट क्या एडवाइस देगा?
By experience, they will come up with something. They have dealt with these situations. They are going to consult PNI clubs. They are going to consult other authorities and come up with some suggestion. They will tell you whether to get close
IMSBC में भी नहीं दिया ना ऐसा कुछ, अगर टेम्परेचर एक्सीड होता है 55 डिग्री से।
हाँ देखो,
उसमें भी
अगर सुनो एक मिनट, अगर तुम्हारा ये तुमने डिटेक्ट कर लिया ये बिफोर लोडिंग, फिर तो तुमने लोड ही नहीं करना, बात ही खत्म।
नहीं सर, मैं इन वॉयज बात कर रहा हूँ, इन वॉयज ऐसा कुछ एक्सपीरियंस होता है तो
In voyage, then one thing is definite, that you have to now stop ventilation because this can lead to self-heating, temperature rising, so ventilation बंद कर दो। And then
करेक्ट सर, IMSBC में तो इतना ही दिया है, 55 ज्यादा से हो गया तो वी एक्सपेक्ट फायर, क्लोज वेंटिलेशन, स्टार्ट बाउंड्री कूल और परस्यू टू नियरेस्ट पोर्ट।
करेक्ट,
तो इतना ही दिया।
ठीक है, तो ऐसे ही करना। IMSBC तो बाइबल है।
बट नहीं सर, एक्सपर्ट मैं ये पूछना चाहता हूँ, एक्सपर्ट ऐसा क्या एडवाइस देगा, वो उसके रिगार्डिंग एक दो पॉइंट आप बता देंगे तो अच्छा होगा।
Well, very fortunately, I've never had an issue like this to seek expert advice. ठीक है,
बस उसमें भी ऐसा
है।
वैसे अब नॉलेज के लिए
मुझे लगता है expert advice can correlate and they may seek a port of refuge. इसके ज़्यादा कोई कर ही नहीं सकता वो, or he may ask you to return to the port of loading.
ये तो वही हो गया ना सर जो IMSBC में दिया, उसके एक्स्ट्रा मैं कुछ और पूछ रहा था।
अब नहीं IMSBC से बना नहीं सकते। Or he might ask you to come back to a port of loading where by the time you reach, he might arrange for inerting. He might arrange for inert gases to be introduced into cargo for suffocating the oxygen.
वो तो वही हो गया जो पोर्ट ऑफ रिफ्यूजी, जो नियरेस्ट पोर्ट होगा वो कन्वीनियंट के पास।
That is the best.
ठीक है।
Now, water actually is not advisable to be used for fighting fire, but it can be safely used and is advised to be used for boundary cooling. And of course, monitoring atmosphere, which is temperature as well as gas emissions, is essential, should be done twice daily. I am not saying should be done once daily and twice only if changes are detected. I have a belief that it should be done twice every day to be on the safer side. See, you are only going to exceed what is recommended. That is okay. You should not be below the recommended levels, which is once daily. Maybe the best option will be to, at least for the first few days, when you are not unsure about the nature of the cargo and the changes being caused in the hold, then you can monitor these daily, twice daily. When you are satisfied and you are assured that nothing untoward is happening, things are under control, maybe you can reduce to once a daily. But I don't think it costs much. I don't think it takes too much time. By monitoring temperature and gases inside the cargo hold loaded with coal, maybe you can do it twice daily. Instruments should be available even by reference to IMSBC or SOLAS. Instruments measuring methane, carbon monoxide and oxygen. This is coming directly from my MSPC code and SOLAS, Chapter 6, Carriage of Cargo. So this is something you will have to take care if you are ordered or if you are chartered to carry coal cargo, then you will make sure you have these instruments for measuring gases and of course temperature force. Actually speaking, it is not referring to coal itself, it is talking about a bulk cargo liable to emit a toxic or flammable gas or cause oxygen depletion in cargo space. Appropriate instruments for measuring concentration of gas or oxygen in the air should be provided. This is what regulation says of IMSBC code and SOLAS, regulation 18 of chapter 6. Not only that, you are carrying this instrument, but it is required that steps are taken by training, etc., by drills, that crew on ships are trained in the use of such instruments. Just having the instrument on board is not enough. The use also should be explained and trained into. Let's go on. देखो, the IMSPC says ships should be suitably fitted, carrying on board equipment for measuring the following things or items without requiring entry in the cargo space. This is a requirement. This is how sighting of the measuring force should be located, so that you can measure concentration of methane, concentration of oxygen, concentration of carbon monoxide, and the pH value of cargo space bridges without a requirement for entering the space. And of course, these instruments should be serviced as per your record and calibrated. And again, no need to repeat, I think you will remember it and always quote it. People should be trained in the use of these instruments. So that is how it goes. Training also included as part of precaution. The results of these monitoring shall be recorded. ISM code, SMS procedure, no use of monitoring and not recording. If not recorded, not done. So you must record it also. Document it. If you are going to have a gas monitoring done for this period of gas monitoring, any ventilation which you are already undertaking should be suspended. There is no point of carrying out gas monitoring with ventilation in progress. That will give you wrong readings. So for that period when you are doing the gas monitoring, the ventilation, whatever is being done, should be suspended.
सर जो अभी पढ़ाया ये इसके प्लीज ये वाली पीडीएफ अपलोड कर देंगे।
हाँ, ये जिससे हम अभी अभी हम लोग देख रहे हैं।
हाँ सर वही वाली।
ओके, एक मिनट।
या तो सर इसके शॉर्ट पे नोट्स हो।
ये अपलोड कर सकता हूँ मैं पीडीएफ, ये जैसे ही बोल रहा। उसके बाद आप नोट्स बनाओ इसको पढ़ पढ़ के, क्योंकि दैट विल हेल्प यू टू आइडेंटिफाई व्हाट शुड बी मेमोराइज्ड। एग्जाम आपने देना है, सो यू शुड मेक सम एफर्ट टू कंसोलिडेट फ्रॉम व्हाटएवर आई एम सेंडिंग यू, सो दैट यू गेट इनटू द ग्रूव। तब आपको पता लगेगा कि क्या चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है, बिकॉज ओनली दैट यू विल कंपाइल। एग्री?
तो सारे नोट्स एक साथ सेंड कर सकते हो आप, एक साथ जाके पूरा एक साथ रहे और उसको
हाँ, वो एक ही लिंक में जा रहा है, एक ही लिंक में जा रहा है वो।
नहीं सर, सारे एक साथ जितने भी अभी तक है ना।
एक साथ, नो पॉइंट, एक साथ। वी आर गोइंग थ्रू इट part by part as we go along the topic. As just now somebody has said, I'm game. मैं मानता हूँ चलो ये वाला टॉपिक ऑलमोस्ट कवर्ड है, सो दिस कैन बी अपलोडेड। मैं इसका आइडेंटिफाई कर रहा हूँ टाइटल क्या है, अभी अभी कर रहा हूँ। इसको अभी करते हैं। अच्छा, since we have gotten to that thing, somebody was saying something कि मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ, टॉपिक हो चुका है, क्या था वो? somebody was saying something, अब बात कर लेते हैं उसकी। हाँ जी, अब मुझे नाम नहीं मालूम है क्योंकि वो तो मैं बंद रखता हूँ। somebody was saying something।
सर मुझे पूछना था शिवांग।
हाँ शिवांग बोलो।
सर कल जो हमने पढ़ा था बल्क वाला, इसमें मैं देख रहा था ये जो आपने बताया था पोटेंशियल हैजार्ड्स, हल स्ट्रक्चर डैमेज और पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स। ये जैसे एक क्वेश्चन आया, राइट द हैजार्ड्स फॉर द बल्क कैरियर, तो ये जो पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स हैं ये उसमें लिख सकते हैं नहीं लिख सकते?
हाँ बिल्कुल लिख सकते हैं
सर पर माय सेकंड क्वेश्चन इज दिस, ये पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम इज सेइंग, ये तो वो बता रहा है ना कि आप लोडिंग उस तरीके से करो कि आपको हैजार्ड्स नहीं हो, तो ये कैसे लिख सकते हैं? लाइक फर्स्ट वो डेविएशन फ्रॉम द लोडिंग मैनुअल,
राइट,
है ना, फिर शैलो डेप्थ लोडिंग, हाई लोडिंग रेट, पर ये हैजार्ड्स बल्क कार्गो के कैसे होगा? दैट आई वांट टू आस्क।
ओके। See, more appropriately, this is an answer to the question which says discuss the hazards and the potential problems involved which are detrimental, and I'm using the word again detrimental क्योंकि क्वेश्चन ऐसे पूछा गया, detrimental to the structure and hull failure of a bulk carrier with regards to improper loading and improper handling of cargo gear।
तो अभी हैजार्ड्स वाला टॉपिक आप कराओगे बल्क कैरियर का? सर
नहीं कर रहे हैं ना, कर तो गया, और क्या करना बोलो।
सर जैसे व्हेन आई वाज इन द सेकंड मैच आई यूज्ड टू रीड दैट, उस टाइम पे जैसे हैजार्ड्स पढ़ते थे तो क्या पढ़ते थे? नॉर्मल से पढ़ते थे, लाइक स्ट्रक्चरल डैमेज, लॉस ऑफ रिडक्शन ड्यू टू स्टेबिलिटी, जिसमें इतने सारे कारण आ गए, केमिकल रिएक्शन, ऑक्सीडेशन, लिक्विफिकेशन,
हाँ
अब जो
ठीक है।
पढ़ते थे, है ना। अब ये जो आपने कल परसों में 2 दिन में पढ़ाया, बेसिकली फर्स्ट जैसे हल स्ट्रक्चर पढ़ा दिए, पोटेंशियल प्रॉब्लम्स पढ़ा दिए, फिर आपने क्या बोलते हैं लोड्स, तो बेसिकली ये तो ये हुआ ना कि आपको लोडिंग, जैसे आपने लोड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन पढ़ाया था, जैसे होमोजीनियस ब्लॉक, अल्टरनेटिव और ये सब, तो ये सब तो बेसिकली ये बता रहा है हैजार्ड्स तो अपने हुए नहीं ना, इसलिए मैं पूछ रहा हूँ आप अलग से पढ़ाएंगे या हो गए? आई मीन टू आस्क दैट।
नहीं देखो ऐसा है, एक बात हमेशा याद रखना शिवांग, जो तुमने सेकंड मिनट में पढ़ा है, ठीक है, वो तो स्टैंड करेगा ही। इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू गेट वॉश्ड अवे। दिस व्हाट वी आर डूइंग नाउ इन द अचीवमेंट्स इज अ बिल्ड अप ऑन दैट। नॉटविथस्टैंडिंग व्हाट यू हैव डन इन सेकंड मिनट इज स्टिल गोइंग टू होल्ड। उसको बिल्ड अप कर दो। ये थोड़ी कि उसमें सिलेट वो आपने इरेज कर दिया कि वो सेकंड मिनट खत्म हो गया, ऐसा नहीं है। It It is going to hold true, but this is a build up और expand कर रहे हो आप. For example, अगर आप मेरी बात मानो तो still water shear force SWSF या still water bending moment SWBM, ये तो सेकंड में नहीं किया होगा आपने.
नो सर.
Because that is beyond the purview of second bit. तो वहाँ पे at best आपने पढ़ा होगा या आपने इंटरेक्शन किया होगा that it is possible that by improper loading and cargo distribution you can exceed stresses. ये यहाँ तक पढ़ा होगा maximum. But now you are building upon that and you are telling them how you should be taking care of shear forces, bending moments due to improper loading, right? And then of course you're talking also of handling of cargo here. Bulldozer, grabs, which can cause damage to the ship structure. But to say that chapter is closed now, second mid is done, that is not true. That will remain. It has to, because each competency is only going to build up more towards the academic discussion. However, as far as cargo is concerned, and I'm sure you are aware, this is the last competency you're going to talk about cargo work, which is phase 1. Phase 2 में cargo work नहीं है. ASM में subject as it is cargo work नहीं है. But again, ASM you see, it has a cumulative effect. Anything can be done. Anything can be asked. Because it is presumed the second phase से लेके अब तक ASM तक सारी चीजें cover करती हैं. So notwithstanding that, cargo work as a function, as a separate standalone subject is last time you do it as in MP1. MP2 में नहीं है. Second bit में है जो आप कराएं. ASM में नहीं है. Standalone नहीं है, but ASM में दूसरी problem है that everything and anything is included because it is supposed to be the last competency, the highest competency, so anything can be addressed. तो ये मत सोचो शिवांग कि जो आपने सेकंड बिट में कर लिया that is done away. No, that is not true. You are building upon that. So anything you can remember, and I'm very happy that you can remember from second bits, that is to be remembered. That you can also write and you can build upon that. अच्छा, अभी एक चीज देखिए जरा, आपके लिंक पे भेजा मैंने. कैन यू सी इट? कोल कार्गो आ गया क्या आपके पास? इट इज टाइटल्ड कोल कार्गोस पीडीएफ. देखो पहुंच गया.
हाँ पर आ गया, देख लीजिए.
वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड. ओके, since we are still on the job, time is still there. Anything else you want to raise? So of course there the topic does take care. अब तो ये आपके पास पहुंच गया है. You can go through it. Coals emitting methane is one thing, and then coals liable for self-heating is another thing. मतलब another thing means coal तो है, but these are two categories or two precautions or two hazards identified. तो इसके लिए precautions हैं which are termed as special precautions. You know all this. When you talk of self-heating coal, declared as self-heating coal, then these are the precautions you have to take. And this is coming from the code itself. Cargo spaces closed immediately after completion of loading. Hatch covers to be additionally sealed with additional sealing tapes. Natural surface ventilation only is permitted. Absolute minimum time necessary to remove methane. Only for that time, natural surface ventilation. Once you are sure that methane has been removed, then you stop. Because oxygen also is not to be introduced into the cargo compartment, which can only promote self-heating. Not to enter the cargo space unless absolutely necessary. And
Excuse me, sir.
जी,
Sir, which is this sealing tape? Like before you told that we cannot apply the sealing tape if the PSC sees that, or they will raise questions. So is it that one or something else?
No, it is something like that. अच्छा सुनो मेरी बात सुनो. Since you have raised the subject, suppose there is a tape which a lot of people sitting here have heard of it and used it. Ramneck. Ramneck. I spell it out for you. Romeo, Alpha, Mike, November, Eco, Charlie, Kilo. Ramneck. Ramneck tape. Okay? That is a sealing tape. And these candidates with whom we were interacting had said they were using these tapes. They were using it for proper sealing. So that kind of tape is advisable. But for what reason? Not for the sealing of the hatch cover for water ingress, but for prevention of any ingress of oxygen, because you are carrying self-heating coal. See, these hatch covers are not airtight. They are weathertight, yes, but they are not airtight. So these sealing tapes are being used to make it airtight so that no air can go inside. Because that cargo has been identified as self-heating and that can be promoted. Self-heating along with oxygen availability is going to be more dangerous. Methane emission के लिए ये precautions है. I think we've gone through it, so more or less we are done. topic has been covered. We can end our discussion here for coal cargo. Unless you have something to say, I'm going to type in the chat box which you can respond. अगर कुछ पूछना है तो बोलिए आप.
नहीं करना, भेजा है उसको कल देते हैं, कल तो दे देगा कीर्ति को। अब आपका एक्सेस हो रहा है, अब हो गया, उसका आईडी क्या था?